Hey Blue Ridge, I'm Cami Smith and welcome to Blue Ridge Online. I am so thankful that you guys are spending some time with us this morning. We are fresh off of Thanksgiving week and we're going to continue in some rest and worship today by engaging together in worship. So let's join the worship team.
You meet me on the mountain top. You see me in the valley low. There is no home without you here. I find you in the crowded thoughts. You quiet all the question marks. There is no space your love won't fill. And I'll trade all my fear for peace of mind. All my heaviness for burdens light. And this will be my song. You are always good. I sing it all day long. You are always good. And when the day is through, I am left with you. Are always you. Are always good. I'll set my eyes on perfect faith. You'll finish what you start in me. My heart will be an offering. And I'll trade all my fear for peace of mind. All my heaviness for burdens light. This will be my song. You are always good. I sing it all day long. You are always good. And when the day is through, I am left with you. Are always you. Are always every melody. You'll sing it back to me. You'll sing it back. Every melody, you'll sing it back to me. You'll sing it back. And every melody, you'll sing it back to me. You'll sing it back. And every melody, you'll sing it back to me. You'll sing it back. I traded all my fear for peace of mind. All my heaviness for burdens light. And this will be my song. You are always good. I'll sing it all day long. You are always good. And when
and welcome to Blue Ridge Online. I am Cami Smith, and I'm so thankful that you guys are here with us. God is so good, and He is moving in and around Blue Ridge, and it's being shown through the stories that we're seeing in people's lives, specifically through baptism. And so while we know that not everybody can come to an in-person service where we are doing baptisms, we've created kind of a compilation so that you can see how God is moving through baptism. And so we have a video on our YouTube channel, Virtual Baptism. We encourage you guys to check it out. If you haven't already, I want to invite you to come to our in-person services at any of our campuses. We've got Be Our Kids programs up and running, and we're super excited to get to gather and worship together. All of the details are on our website, so go check that out. So today we're going to continue in our series, The Church Has Left the Building. Let's join Jeremy.
Have you ever been to an awkward party? A party that was just uncomfortable and you couldn't wait to leave? Probably the most awkward party that I've been to was when Jana and I were invited to a birthday of a young boy whose mom had recently been released from prison. Now that wasn't the awkward part. See, we had been asked to help care for him and his sister while his mom got her life on track. The awkward part was one side of the family really wanted this. They thought it was best and were really appreciative of the part that we were playing. The other side of the family, though, they thought we had ulterior motives. They didn't trust us and didn't want us anywhere near these kids. Now just imagine how fun of a party that was to attend. A couple hours of my life that couldn't have gone fast enough. What about you? Have you ever been to an awkward party? One where maybe you didn't know anyone? Or one where you didn't fit in, or one where you knew people didn't want you there? Or maybe your personality makes every party you experience kind of awkward. What's an awkward party you've been to? On the other side of that, what's one of the best parties you've ever been to? What was it like? My 40th birthday party? It was 4 days long on a houseboat with some of my closest friends. Just 4 days of uninterrupted fun, food, and water. I just loved every moment. What about you? What makes a party fun and enjoyable? Is it the size, who's there, where it's located, what you're doing? What was a really good party you've attended, and what was a really awkward one? Well, today, as we continue in this series, The Church Has Left the Building, we're going to continue to look at that third ring of what it means to be a disciple or an apprentice of Jesus. This whole idea of being on mission with Him. And we're going to look at a party that Jesus attended, a party that had a little bit of all the above. It was fun. It was big. It was also uncomfortable and awkward. It had all the right people while at the same time having all the wrong people. Some people were glad to be there and some were extremely on edge. I want to look at this party that happened over 2,000 years ago where we'll meet three different groups of people. And I want us to ask an honest question. Of the three groups, who do I most identify with? Because I believe if we can answer that question, we will each be able to take a practical next step in becoming or living more like a disciple of Jesus's. So if you have a Bible, would you open up to Luke chapter 5? Luke chapter 5, that's where we're going to spend all of our time. Now, of the four guys, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, who recorded for us the life of Jesus, three of them, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, make note of this party in their writings. And while all the events that these guys share with us about Jesus' life are important, whenever one event is mentioned multiple times, we want to treat it as especially important. So let's start reading in Luke chapter 5, verse 27. We read this. After this, Jesus went out and saw a tax collector by the name of Levi sitting at his tax booth. "Follow me," Jesus said to him. And Levi got up, left everything, and followed him. Then Levi held a great banquet for Jesus at his house. A large crowd of tax collectors and others were eating with him. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law who belonged to their sect complained to the disciples, "Why do you eat and drink with tax collectors and sinners?" Verse 31, Jesus answered them, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance." So, here at or within viewing distance of this very large party, you have three main groups of people. The first group, the group of tax collectors and sinners. The second group, a group of Pharisees and teachers of the law. The third group, a group of Jesus's disciples. Of these three groups, can you ask yourself the question, who do I most identify with? So starting with the first group mentioned, tax collectors and sinners, let's unpack each group a little bit more. Now, who wants to be labeled a sinner or a tax collector? My guess is not many of us. Maybe another way to label this group would be as irreligious. Now, with that being said, what's interesting to me about this group is the fact that most of them would have been made up of Jewish men and women. Men and women who grew up in Jewish homes. Many of them growing up going to the synagogue each Saturday, being taught the Jewish scriptures, what we call our Old Testament. They grew up hearing about people like Abraham and Isaac and Joseph and Jacob and Moses. Most there would have been very aware of God's moral law and its do's and its don'ts. But somewhere along the way, maybe because of the hypocrisy they witnessed, maybe it was the lure of a more lucrative lifestyle, maybe it was because of a tragedy, maybe it was the life that they had been modeled for them by their parents. We just don't know. But somewhere along the way, they chose a lifestyle, a profession, a way of living that was opposed to the God that most of them grew up hearing about. Now, as we'll see in a moment, the Pharisees have an unhealthy, judgmental view of this group. But let me say this, the Pharisees aren't completely off base. Jesus, as we just read, he said he came for the sick. What's he implying? Jesus is implying that the irreligious group of tax collectors and sinners are what? Sick. So let me ask some questions that only you can answer. Is this group you? Have you chosen to live your life on your own terms? Maybe having grown up in a Christian home, but for a whole host of reasons, you walked away from what your parents believed, what your family thought. Is the phrase, "you just do you," or the philosophy, "as long as my choices don't hurt someone else, then they're my choices to make"? Are these things you believe to be true? Have your desires been, for the most part, the leader and the director of your life? What you want, who you want, what looks good to you, and what's right in your own eyes. Be honest with yourself here. In living this way, are you experiencing the life you had hoped for? With the philosophical approach, "you just do you," is life what you had dreamed? Or in the stillness of the night, do you feel that soul sickness to which Jesus was referring? Is this group you? Here's the great news. The people just like you back in Jesus' day, while they may have hated and turned their back on religion, while they may have despised the hypocrisy and the piousness of the religious around them, they loved being with Jesus. In fact, in Mark's recording of this event, look at what he adds. In Mark chapter 2, verse 15, it's small, but it's significant. While Jesus was having dinner at Levi's house, many tax collectors and sinners were eating with him and his disciples. And this is a part to take note, for there were many who followed him. Get that? A large group of these sinners and tax collectors were following Jesus around, listening to his teaching, and now were packing this house with their buddy Levi, sharing a meal with Jesus. People like you liked Jesus. And even the better news, Jesus liked them. He wanted to be with them. He wanted to share a meal with them. This Jewish rabbi wanted to hang with sinners and tax collectors. But here's the deal. His time with them had a greater purpose than friendship. He wanted to address the sickness of their souls. But he wasn't going to force it on them, and he won't force it on you. Of the three groups, can you ask yourself this question? Who do I most identify with? What about the second group mentioned? The group made up of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law. If the last group was labeled the irreligious, this group would probably be labeled the most religious in attendance that day. Now, most likely they weren't actually at the party. Because of religious restrictions, they wouldn't have been willing to enter into the house of a tax collector. And remember, this party is at Levi's house, the Levi who's just left his old life of tax collecting to follow Jesus. So while they most likely weren't in Levi's house joining in the food and the fun, they were close enough by to witness all that was taking place. And we know they weren't pleased with what they saw because as a group, the Pharisees were often most concerned and consumed by the outward actions of people. Let me ask you a really tough question. Is this you? Is this me? This is probably the hardest group to admit identifying the most with. See, the ability to identify with this group requires a large level of self-awareness and brutal inward-focused honesty, something most of us, including myself, are not all that great at. When we read the Bible, for example, we see ourselves as the protagonists, the good guys, right? When we read about David and Goliath, who are we in the story? We're David, right? When we read about Joseph and Potiphar's wife, we don't see ourselves as the scandalous woman that was Potiphar's wife. We see ourselves as Joseph, the hero in the account. We're the people that are for God, not the ones that oppose him. But here's something sobering. A study by the Barna Group of self-professing Christians in North America found that the overwhelming majority of us, that is 72% of self-professing Christians, had a large combination of pharisaical attitudes and actions versus the attitudes and actions of Jesus. Meaning, the group that the vast majority of us Christians most resemble, the group in the Gospels we have the most in common with, are the Pharisees. So can we be honest with ourselves? Is this me? Is this you? Let me ask you this. Are you most frustrated by those people? Are you quick to criticize people by their choices? Maybe not out loud, but in your mind you have your categories. That's the one who cheated. That's the husband who drinks too much. She always has a new boyfriend. Based on your Facebook posts and your Instagram reposts, would someone on the opposite side of the racial debate in our country today feel welcome to share a meal with you at your table in your home? Would a person living a gay or transgendered lifestyle feel like they could really be your friend? Is it making you mad that I'm even asking these questions? Do you believe we should stand against people who are opposed to Christian values? If your kids described your home life, would it reflect your public life? Is your patriotism synonymous with faith in God? I'll tell you, one of the greatest compliments I've ever received from a person who didn't follow Jesus was when my wife and I were out to eat with a gay couple we had been friends with for a couple of years. And at this dinner, they asked us as Christians what our belief was about homosexuality. Was it right or wrong? Now, before answering their question, I told them that my answer was going to make them uncomfortable. But I'd be honest because they were asking. And I said this. I said, as a follower of Jesus, when I read the Bible, I can't defend the lifestyle in Scripture. The Bible seems to me to be very clear that homosexuality is a sin. But, I continued, my job as a follower of Jesus isn't to make you straight, but to let you see my love for Jesus and my relationship with him so that maybe one day you would want that same relationship. And after a few awkward moments of silence, one of them said, "You're right. Your answer does make us uncomfortable. But I guess if we're going to hang out with Christians, you're the type we'd want to hang around. Let me ask you a question only you can answer. Are you one of the 7 out of 10 professing Christians that identify more with the Pharisees than any of the other 2 groups mentioned? Of the 3 groups, can you ask yourself the question, who do I most identify with? Is it the 3rd group, the disciples? Another label for them might be Jesus' apprentices. Those who had left their old lives behind to follow Jesus. Those who, as they followed Jesus, he was making them into something new. Those who were joining Jesus on his mission. Now, it's not that the disciples were perfect. Far from it. It doesn't take long when you read the Bible to see the disciples were a work in progress, that Jesus was dealing with their sin on a regular basis. It's also true that while the disciples weren't the Pharisees, they struggled with their own pharisaical attitudes and judgments towards people. In fact, I love that in this episode that we've just read, when the Pharisees asked Jesus' disciples, why do you all eat with sinners and tax collectors? Jesus doesn't even let the disciples answer. Because I'm not sure they knew why. I wonder how uncomfortable they were at this party. I mean, here you have this man, Levi, now an unemployed tax collector, was just added to their ranks. A type of person any good Jewish young man or woman knew they shouldn't hang around. And now they're at this party filled with his friends and other shady people. But while I'm not sure they were entirely comfortable, while I'm not sure they understood exactly why they were at this party at Levi's house, who, by the way, would later become known as Matthew and would write the book of Matthew, the very first book of the New Testament, what they are doing is exactly what Jesus is asking those of us to do who are truly his apprentices, who are truly his disciples, to intentionally foster relationships and friendships with people who have yet to follow him. You see, they followed Jesus into this great banquet. They're surrounding themselves with people who didn't believe what they believed, those who had lived a lot of their life opposed to God. And no matter how uncomfortable they were, there they were at that table with Jesus, sharing a meal with people. In a normal day, they wouldn't. Why? Because disciples, as apprentices, you do what your rabbi does. You mimic your teacher. And their rabbi had said in Luke 5:31, the second half, it's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I'm not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance. You see, in his answer to the Pharisees, Jesus is also addressing all authentic disciples of his. He's saying, there are these people who have an ache in their soul for something more than what they've experienced. And they matter to me, so they must matter to you. Are you, like me, an authentic disciple of Jesus's? Then he's asking you the same question he's been asking me. Who's been at your table lately? Other people who believe what you believe? People who are easy to hang around? Or those people that surrounded Jesus's table at Matthew's party that day? If I'm honest, guys, this has been one of the easiest things to lose sight of during COVID. You see, before COVID, there were multiple environments outside of the church building I was regularly engaging in, places that put me around people who wouldn't have shown up to Blue Ridge on a Sunday morning. People who believe different than I believe. People whose lifestyle and language were very different than the average Sunday churchgoers. But when COVID came and social distancing became the norm, one of the easiest parts of being a disciple for me to ignore, to not fight for, was this purposeful, intentional time and space for relationship building with those who are far from Jesus. But here's the deal. With where the world's at right now, I believe Jesus is asking those of us who most identify as disciples to set aside ourselves, our own challenges, which are many, by the way, to create space at our tables, in our homes, in our daily routine, to cultivate relationships and friendships with people who have yet to follow him. People who need to experience the hope that we found in a relationship with him. People who need to experience the transformation of the human life and soul that Jesus offers. People like Matthew and his friends at a party 2,000 plus years ago. So let me ask the question again. Of the three groups at Matthew's party that day, who do I most identify with? Is it the tax collectors, the sinners, the irreligious? Or is it the Pharisees, the teachers of the law, the most religious? Or is it the disciples, Jesus' apprentices? What's a next step for each of us? Maybe it was the tax collectors and sinners, the irreligious, that you most identified with. Notice in the story of Matthew's party, what did they do? They kept going to the places where they could encounter Jesus. It's the same thing he's inviting you to do, to keep tuning into talks like this. Find a disciple of Jesus you respect and trust. Ask them questions. Ask them to help you understand more about who this man Jesus is. Keep on placing yourself in environments where you can get to know Jesus more. Maybe even if you're ready today, you could admit to Jesus that after everything you've chased after, there's still this sickness in your soul you can't heal. See, doctors can't do anything for us unless we're willing to bring ourselves to them and admit there's something wrong. Can you admit there's something wrong at a soul level? Jesus isn't waiting to throw stones. He's waiting for you to take that step so he can step in and fill that gap you have been unable to fill. Maybe it was the Pharisees, the teachers of the law, the most religious there that day. You see, Jesus came for Pharisees just like he came for sinners. But it's got to start with a humble heart. Maybe your next step in humbling yourself before Jesus is to confess your pharisaical attitude and actions as sin and ask for his forgiveness. Could you just say, I don't want my biases, my judgmental attitude towards other people and their actions to cause me to miss you, Jesus, like the Pharisees missed you. Would you forgive me? And here's the deal. If you're serious, he forgives. There's no need to prove it. Just humble yourself by authentically asking for his forgiveness, and it's yours. Or maybe yours, like mine, is that third group. The group that made up the disciples or the apprentices of Jesus. What would a next step be for us? Well, with COVID, many of us have a little bit more time going into this holiday season because a lot of events like Christmas parties and school Christmas events and a lot of other social gatherings in these next couple of months are canceled this year. What if rather than have a big, great party like Matthew threw, what if we ask God to lead us to another family? Another single, another college student, another couple, another coworker who is yet to follow Jesus, and we invited them to a dinner. We invited them to a dinner a couple of times over the next several months. Maybe at a restaurant, maybe in your home, whatever you're comfortable with, to just get to know them, to hear their story, to build a relationship that could turn into something eternal. What if we could throw many, M-A-N-Y, mini, M-I-N-I, Matthew-type parties over the next couple of months? What could God begin to do with that? Let me ask the question one more time. Of the three groups there that day, who do you most identify with? And what is God asking your next step to be?
You were a lover before time's beginning. You gave your love freely, withholding nothing. Jesus, my Jesus, you carried the weight of the world on your shoulders. You stopped at nothing to prove you were for us. Jesus, my Jesus. It's extravagant, it doesn't make sense, we'll never comprehend. unthinkable. Only heaven knows just how far you'd go to say you love us. Our Father, Creator, you hold our hearts together. There's no one higher than you. Redeemer, defender, our great and mighty Savior. There's no one higher than you. You are always with us, gracious to forgive us. By your power we've been set free. And Lord, we stand amazed in your presence, astounded by your mercy and love. Our hands are lifted high in surrender. Your grace on me is always enough. And there is no one higher than our God. There is no one greater than you. So let my life forever praise the glory of your name. There is no one higher than you. You don't belittle our pain and our suffering. You comfort us in our greatest unraveling. Jesus, my Jesus, you are the dawn that is breaking within me. You are the sun that is rising around me. Jesus, my Jesus, it's extravagant. It doesn't make sense. We'll never comprehend the way you love us. It's unthinkable. Only heaven knows just how far you'd go to say you love us. It's extravagant. It doesn't make sense. We'll never comprehend the way you love us. It's unthinkable. Only heaven knows just how far you'd go to say you love us. Lord, there's no one higher than Jesus. There is no one higher, no one greater, no one like our God. There is none more able, Christ our Savior, great and glorious. There is no one higher, no one greater, no one like our God. There is none more able, Christ our Savior, great and glorious. There is no one higher, no one greater, no one like our God. There is none more able, Christ our Savior, great and glorious. It's extravagant. It doesn't make sense. We'll never comprehend the way you love us. It's unthinkable. Only heaven knows just how far you'd go to say you love us. It's extravagant. It doesn't make sense. We'll never comprehend it's yours, no conditions when you pull me close. No, I won't resist it.
Thank you guys so much for joining us today at Blue Ridge Online. I encourage you as you head into your week to really pray through the talk today and ask God, what does He have for you? And we will see you guys next Sunday.